Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 105 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip comes to us from special guest Catherine Auman.
Well, I would really advise this whole clickbait idea. We've all got stuck with clickbait on Facebook. You're like, why am I still on 10 celebrity boyfriends or whatever? Or why do I want to see number 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on to get to the end of, women who date younger men or whatever. And so that with that clickbait thing, people really like it. We all respond to it. And I found that making clickbait type titles, and just in case some of your listeners don't know what that is, that's like 6 tips for 10 ways to, the number doesn't matter so much as, those people like that. And then I organize my talks that way with those 6, 10, whatever. And that helps me organize my thinking. The audience responds to it. And what's the strangest thing? I look up and people are taking notes. And if there's anything more satisfying to a speaker to look up and people are taking notes on your top 6 tips that just came off the top of your head, but they're actually organizing the material that way for themselves as well. That's a tip I would like to offer to any speaker. That when I wasn't doing that, when we started doing that, we started getting more response, more attendance, and it was easier for me as a speaker.
Stick around, and after the break, we'll hear more from Catherine Auman. Welcome back. Some of us go ahead and become speakers because, well, we just love it. We love the stage, the crowd, the power of sharing a message. It's intoxicating. Other folks build a speaking career as a tool to share their message and drive other parts of their business. And that's what Catherine Auman does. What I really like about this conversation, besides the fact that Tantric dating is now a part of my vocabulary, is how Catherine lives the idea of building your own stage. This is something I've talked about a lot over the past few months, and she has done it in both the virtual and real worlds. Catherine Auman, LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist, is a psychotherapist in private practice in Los Angeles. She is the author of 3 books, with 2 more being released in 2019. Catherine speaks twice monthly to live audiences and was previously a frequent guest on the national TV show Extra. You can visit her online at catherineauman.com or on her YouTube channel. Find those links and more at 2minutetalktips.com/Catherine. Now, let's meet Catherine Auman. So Catherine, thank you so much for joining me this week on 2-Minute Talk Tips.
Oh, thanks. It's so great to be here.
I'm really fascinated by just this extensive list of things that you have an expertise in. And as I was going through and preparing for this show, I just started listing out a whole bunch of things I wanted to talk to. And if we covered that entire list, I realized this would be a 10-hour episode and nobody needs that.
We might have to go offline for that one.
Yeah, exactly. But to start off with, what was your earliest memory of speaking with groups of people?
Well, I have my earliest memory was I was in early elementary school, and they were putting on a little, elementary school version of the musical Oklahoma. You remember that?
Wow.
Oh, Oklahoma. So anyway, and I had a one line to remember, and I got up and I had practiced it. And I still remember standing there on stage completely frozen, not remembering my one line.
Oh.
And they kind of got the hook and pulled me off. It's just funny that I would end up speaking after that earliest memory.
Right. So, and that's one of those things where those early grade school plays and recitals and performances can be so instrumental in starting someone on a career for speaking. But How did you get past that?
Well, over the years, I think that as I spoke, and I think the more that we find our own voice, the more people respond positively. So I think maybe it was having to do someone else's words. Like when I would take acting classes, I was just a terrible failure. But when I started speaking from the heart, I started getting positive feedback. So I think that's what kept me going was if I had something to say and I was speaking my truth, it's not going to reach everyone, but there's going to be people who respond to that. I believe that's how I continued on.
Well, that's fantastic. And that makes a lot of sense, too. I mean, one of the nice things, too, about speaking from your heart and speaking authentically is that it's a lot easier to generate what you're going to talk about in the moment. And you don't have to spend as much time memorizing a particular order of words.
Yeah, which I am a complete disaster at. So, that's not for me. But as you said, being able to speak the way that you personally speak and your own linear way of organizing information is much more effective.
No, it's why in high school I was so much better at chemistry than I was at biology. Biology, I had to memorize a whole bunch of stuff. Chemistry, It was more systems that you could figure out.
I actually was not good in either of those, so I don't know.
It also depends on getting really invested in stuff that you love doing. Exactly. So you've mentioned acting lessons. You've also done voice lessons, and how has voice lessons helped with your speaking?
Well, when I told all my friends I was doing voice lessons, they were kind of surprised. They're like, "You don't need that." And I had felt that my voice was a little too nasal, and I wasn't really sure what to do about it. And so by taking some voice lessons, I'm not sure if my voice really improved, but I was able to start identifying what needed improvement. So I was able to learn certain things not to do, that it's more powerful if you go down at the end of a sentence, for example. And I also was given some great exercises to do, which I still do before I'm going to speak. So I don't know if the actual quality of my voice changed so much as being able to identify better what I was doing wrong. And I notice in so many disciplines that really, like with writing or speaking or anything, it's like being able to see what we're doing wrong and then correct. It's really helpful.
Right. A lot of times it's not about changing the tool. It's about learning how to more effectively use the tool that you already have.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So when most people hear voice lessons, what they think is singing, and that it's all about, getting ready to sing on stage rather than to speak. And it sounds like your experience was more about that, more focused on speech than on song.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be a singer. I just, actually, it's quite helpful to learn like how to incorporate breathing with speaking, when to take a pause more effectively, certain little tics you might have picked up. Every once in a while, someone might think I'm from the East Coast because there are certain words that I say that I somehow picked up an East Coast inflection. I've never been from the East Coast. Right. I guess I just kind of like the sound of coffee, or I don't know what it was.
Hey, you say it the right way there.
Exactly. I like that. So anyway, the voice teacher was able to point out a few of those things, and I think it was overall a very good experience. Like I said, I didn't really need voice lessons, but this is our craft, so I think it was helpful.
It's a thing where, even whatever team is winning the World Series or the Super Bowl still practices and still brings in coaches and still brings in further training to maximize their performance. Just because you're really good at something doesn't mean there's no value in additional coaching and additional learning.
One of my mentors, I was lucky enough to teach me that if you're good at something, take a class in it. If you already know a lot about something, then take a class in it. Before I heard that piece of advice, I had always thought, well, I know enough about that. I don't need to take a class in it. But he was teaching me that, you might hear the one distinction that you didn't get before that's going to change everything for you. It's such a great piece of advice. So even if you're good at speaking, take classes to become even better. listen to this podcast to become even better. That's been so valuable for me.
It's one of those things where, even by just doing this podcast, I've learned more about why I did certain things and what works and what doesn't, just by, when you go through a class, whether you're teaching a class or taking a class, it's really forcing you to dissect the stuff that you do that has almost become second nature that you don't really think about anymore. And that additional time thinking about it really can help open your eyes for different ways that you can grow.
Exactly. And you can make those little tiny distinctions that can change the whole caliber of what you're doing.
Thinking about, so we're talking about different ways to grow those skills and, different classes and things that you can take. You've also been involved with Toastmasters. How did you get involved with that organization?
I started going to a club in Austin, Texas, actually. And every week that I would go, I'm not kidding, this particular Toastmasters group was like a collection of stand-up comics. I don't know. It was so hilarious and so fun to go every day, every week. And I did 7 of the 10 speeches and learning how to craft the speeches. I really loved the standing up, and I can't remember what it's called. There's this thing where you can stand up and just speaking spontaneously. They give a little award for who did that best. And then, of course, your friends and colleagues are giving you gentle, helpful tips, which is great. And the thing that I liked most about it was this particular club. I've never heard of another club that does it, but they would fine us a nickel for every or ah or So they had a little jar there. We had to stick a nickel in for every time we went, It was just a blast.
Right.
I don't think we went to Tahiti on those earnings, but just really brought to our attention when we were using those fillers.
And once a week, the local banks all run out of rolls of nickels.
Exactly, because there were a lot of them, believe me.
It's amazing how much of that stuff still creeps in and into our language, and just keeping count of it, just being aware of it, can make a huge difference in removing that.
Yeah, I'm afraid now some listeners are going to start counting for you and I how many ahs or ums we're going to do for the rest of the show.
They might, but I'll tell you, if they're really obvious, if they're really easy ones to see in the waveform, I'll just take them right out.
Oh, I like that. Can you follow me around in my daily life too?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That's it. That's what we all need is live audio editors.
Editors, right? It'd be great.
And I could also use things like, I could just use a Control-Z or a Command-Z command in my everyday life to just undo whatever it is I just did.
I like that. I like it a lot.
So one of the great things about speaking at Toastmasters is that it does give you that additional stage time, that additional time speaking in front of groups of people. And that's really one of those most important things to become a more effective speaker, is to just get up on stage, get out there and do those talks. And one of the things that's really amazing about social media and technology today is that it's really empowered us to go ahead and create our own stages, whether that's going to be in the virtual world or in the real world. And one of the things you're doing is you're regularly speaking at your own events in LA. How did you go about creating your own stages in the community?
Well, the first one I was actually asked by one of my clients. She set up a monthly talk for me to speak. I didn't know I had become an expert on dating, but through my own trial and error, I was actually able to give some unique advice. I had written a book on some unusual perspectives I have on dating. So that one came with
I was going to say, and unusual perspectives on dating in LA has got to be just a whole other level of unusual.
Well, that's like unusual triple squared, right? And then the other one was that I'm doing monthly is there's a bookstore / event space, and kind of an alternative bookstore, and they sell crystals and things there. And they have a deal. They have a full event calendar, and they have a fee split. So whatever you bring in, let's say you bring in 10 people and they pay $25 a head, then you split it with them. So there was very little risk involved. And so I started doing an event there to promote my book. And I started advertising it on Facebook, and more people started showing up and starting to get some traction now. So it's very exciting. I'm thinking about doing that in another part of LA. I was looking earlier that they rent the space for $50 an hour, which isn't too much risk. Mm-hmm. Although when you get started, you may not make that. But I figure in any speaking career, if I can break even in the first year, I'm doing great.
Right.
And then you talked about online too, which is that I created a stage, so to speak, and I love that phrase, by starting a YouTube channel. And I went on YouTube and taught myself, my boyfriend and I taught ourselves how to just make little videos with our iPhones of me speaking and how to edit those and turn them into little videos. And then for less than $100, we bought some equipment at home to take some videos at home of us speaking. So we created a stage that way as well to get the word out.
That's awesome. It's really amazing just how simple some of this stuff has become to get started. I've just started doing some Facebook Live stuff for my other show about stroke recovery, because it was just there, and I can use, the webcam and that platform for less produced stuff, or just sort of more draft oriented thinking than what I would do in an actual podcast. And it's so easy to just click that button that says go live, and now you're live, and maybe nobody's watching now. Maybe 5 or 10 people are watching, and maybe 200 people will watch over the next week.
It's amazing. The most difficult thing in this whole process, I haven't done Facebook Live yet. It still scares me. But that's exactly the point. I think the most difficult thing in anything, YouTube, Facebook Live, setting yourself up with speakers somewhere, is getting over your own fear of getting started. And as speakers, we need to speak as much as possible. We're not going to be very good at the beginning, but over time, as we practice, we'll get better at what we do.
And a lot of the successful folks are generally try to be high performers, and we become very concerned about not being perfect at it, not being comfortable with failing at things or worrying about it. And you end up with the perfect becoming the enemy of the good.
Oh, I like how you say that. We really have to allow ourselves to be beginners and to be medium. Just be medium speakers until we can maybe become a little bit above average speakers.
Because you're not going to get to above average, and you're not going to get to great unless you go through those earlier stages.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I was watching someone that I learned about YouTube from, this guy named Sean Cannell. I watched a lot of his videos on how to build a YouTube channel, and he talks about just get started today and put those videos up, and he looks back on his early videos and kind of cringes, but now they're professional level. And I'd have to say the same thing's true for me. My early ones are kind of dorky and not as polished, but I'm learning as I go. Mm-hmm. And, maybe someone can be helped from some of those early videos that the listeners are maybe reticent to do. Just go ahead and put them out. You never know. Somebody might watch it and be helped by it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I tell people who are worried about starting a podcast is go find your favorite podcast that's out there that may have 100, 200, 300 episodes, and go back and listen to those first 10 or 15. And you might not be able to do as well as episode number 300, but you can probably do better than episode 3.
I like that. I like that. It's good.
And what I found in my own experience was that even doing this show, and we're up over 100 episodes now, is that I didn't really even find my voice on the show until I was in the low 40s. And the only way you get there is by doing it.
Mm-hmm. I think that as a speaker, it can be discouraging at the beginning, because you'll give a talk and you'll advertise it, and then, 3 people show up. And you think, was that worth it? And what am I doing? And the answer is yes, it was worth it, because it's always practice. There's always something to learn. most everyone had to start with 3 people coming, then 6 people coming, then 10 people coming. Then, I'm getting in numbers of 16 now. So, but that took a while to build. So again, that's with what we were saying earlier, allowing yourself to be a beginner, allowing yourself to learn what you're doing, allowing yourself to build an audience, allowing yourself to get into the 40s, like you said, before you really hit your stride. I think that's something that's a bit daunting at the beginning, but I think anyone who's made it can say that's how it worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And with those 3 people, you still had the opportunity to help them transform their lives, even when there were just 3 people in the audience. And that in and of itself was a powerful gift.
Yeah, that's what my boyfriend always says to me. He goes, if you helped one person, it was worth it. That's a beautiful motto.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what came first? Your desire to be doing events, or your having this message to share?
I think I always kind of fantasized being a speaker, but I never actually did it. I was too scared and didn't really know what I would talk about. And so I think then actually after I had something I wanted to talk about, a message I wanted to share, then it came together. So I don't know, chicken or egg. I think that there are a lot of things that we want to do, but we don't actually start taking the steps to do them until the right time. And that's certainly how it was for me.
One of those definitions of luck is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Definitely. And it's not just something that comes out of the blue. It's because you've been preparing.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about preparing, one of the things I generally tell folks in my audience is that, 90% of the success of your talk is determined before you ever get on the stage. It's in the rehearsal that you do. It's in the prep work. It's in the authoring. It's in the defining your message. What does your process look like for building a talk?
Well, one of my tips I'm going to give at the end is that I'm a big one on making outlines. So I really sit down with the outline, and I don't really flesh it out too much. I kind of actually, when no one's looking, I kind of talk out loud to myself while I'm making my outline and moving things around here and there and putting them in the order.
I was going to say, if you do that while people are looking in LA, they'll leave you alone and give you some more room.
Well, actually, they'll just assume you're, crazy like everyone else. That's okay. And so I'll make my outline, work with my outline. I kind of let it simmer in my brain for a few days, come back to it. I try not to think about it too much. Try not to overthink and overanalyze, because that, to me, is going to make me very stilted. And then I do my voice exercises that day. And then I'll review my outline again. And then I try to sit down like the half hour before the talk. I try to, I arrive early, I always arrive early at a talk. And then I'll sit by myself and kind of watch people come in with my headphones on, listening to some particular very chill music that I like. And there's kind of a soft vocal refrain of some sort of everything's right with the world type message. And I'll just sit and listen to this and try to chill out and try to give myself kind of a little message of whatever's going to happen is going to happen. If I'm going to forget my words and freeze like I did during Oklahoma, that I'll just turn it into a laugh. And I will trust that what I have to say will come to me. I have my outline. And as relaxed as I can get is how good the talk's going to be. When I used to try to give very structured talks and remember every single thing, that did not make a polished talk. And I think today, like you said, Facebook Live, I think people have become much more used to, I think listeners have become much more used to people speaking extemporaneously, speaking casually, as if they're kind of speaking from their own home, speaking from their office. And a polished speech is not quite as regarded in the same way as it used to. I think people appreciate the human touch. And even if we mess up our words, say a few too many ums, forget what we're saying, we could turn that into humor. And the audiences today, I think, are very forgiving. And they actually like it when they see a touch of our humanity.
Sure. It can help with that connection. And one of the cores, though, of that is you still have to have your core message that you want to land. You still have to have your core goals in mind for your audience and for your talk. And one of the things that you're doing and that you're having these events is that you also have the book to promote. So how do you sell a book from your talk without it becoming a sales pitch and without channeling Billy Mays talking about OxyClean?
I have to say, I'm still learning that. I keep Googling how to sell books from the room, and there's not a lot of good articles on it that I have found yet. So I'm going to write one as soon as I figure it out. I try to mention the book and show it at the beginning. I try to pepper it in with a few stories now and then in the talk. And at the end, then I do the sales pitch. But I'm definitely open for advice on that one. I sell one book to about 10% buy the book of the people that come. So I don't know if that's good or not. I can't find statistics, but it feels good.
And if anybody has any suggestions on that, go ahead and leave them in the comments over at 2minutetalktips.com/Catherine.
I will be waiting with bated breath. I will be anxiously awaiting your comments.
So what is the book about?
Well, I've written 2 books. My second book is about Tantric dating. That's the one that I'm out doing talks about right now, which is that, dating in LA, most people think is focused on superficial concerns. And I would have to say it mostly is. And I've been a spiritual person all my life. And I kind of figured out ways to bring a sort of a more mindful approach to dating, of how to look for what's really important, how to enjoy people while we're dating. I think a lot of the swipe culture is, I'm sure even in Seattle, it's like you look at a picture on Tinder, swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. Doesn't really look like who I'm looking for. And so my book is about how to go about that a little more mindfully, how to actually increase love instead of decrease love during the dating process.
Awesome. And the more I learn about what's happening in online dating and modern dating, the happier I am to have met my girlfriend in an AOL chat room back in 1998.
You are a lucky man. And using my own advice, I met the man of my dreams. We're going on about 15 months now. So it is possible, even in Los Angeles, even in Seattle, wherever you may be. But maybe not doing it completely by conventional standards.
Well, that is fantastic. That to have those results, and more important than to have the results, is to have that person in your life.
Oh my gosh, it's just wonderful to live in love.
So, and of course, he's been very helpful for you with YouTube. It sounds like.
We learned that together. That's a great couple's hobby.
That's awesome. So, so how do you use YouTube then to drive your business?
Well, I take the tapes of our tapes. See how old-fashioned I am? I take the recordings that we've made, and I chunk them down into little 5 to 10 minute bits, and then I post them on Facebook, and I post them in different places on Facebook groups that I belong to. And then I have my channel. I promote my channel. I put some of them up on my website, and then you can use them for other marketing. For example, when I get one place that I give talks, they on their website, they put one of my videos up. And then I'm just surprised because I just got a client from Kansas call me the other day, wanted to do some work with me over the phone because he had found my YouTube channel and watched most of my YouTube videos. So you just never know when you start giving and putting it out there. Like I said, maybe only 3 people watch your video. Oh, thankfully, I'm doing better than that. But maybe 3 people look at your video, and one of them, you never know that someone in Kansas is watching your video and getting some help from it.
The other really interesting thing there is that the way you're creating this content is that you're not starting from scratch this whole time. Your talks are based on the books you're talking about. So you already have that book that you can draw from. And then you're recording these talks and using pieces of those talks to put that onto Facebook, onto YouTube, onto other places. So you're repurposing some of your presentation, and you're able to reuse this content so that everything you do you don't have to start from scratch. You can just optimize it for the particular audience you're talking to at that moment.
And that's another really great thing when you're just starting out, because when we were beginning and only got 3 people and so forth, we would get a video out of it. And you have a video of your talk. Nobody who's looking at your video knows that there are only 3 people there. For all they know, you had an audience of 300. So if you're going to go give a talk somewhere, just, record it on your iPhone, very simple editing, stick it up on YouTube. You start building yourself a library. It also helps with your self-image of yourself as a successful speaker. It's a little hard when you look at your 68 videos on YouTube and go, well, I am out there giving talks. That is going well, but you got to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, get better at it, know what you're doing.
So, Catherine, if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to or where they can attend your events, where should they go?
My website's CatherineAuman.com. My Facebook is Catherine Auman, LMFT.com. That stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. And if you search on YouTube for Catherine Auman, my channel will come up. And I'd love some feedback on that. If you want to, let me know what you think, any tips you have, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll also have all those links available over at 2minutetalktips.com/Catherine. So Catherine, thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. It's great to have the Seattle connection too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we went in areas I never quite expected, and I always love being surprised like that.
Wouldn't think you'd be talking about tantric dating.
Yeah, I had never occurred to me that would be a phrase that would be in my life.
Well, life is full of wonderful surprises.
It certainly is.
Thanks again. I've loved talking with you.
So now, are you ready to go ahead and start your own YouTube channel or regular meetup or presentation space in your community? The tools are there. We just need to pick them up and use them. Visit 2minutetalktips.com/Catherine to find more of Catherine's links or to share your thoughts on this episode in the comments. Share this episode with a friend, colleague, or relative by telling them to visit 2minutetalktips.com/Catherine. Come back next week for my conversation with Richard Flint.
When I first started, people used to buy me, and my message was secondary. What I've seen evolve today is that my message is the most important part, and I'm the bonus to it.
And of course, as always, don't get best. Get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.